The Bay Area jazz scene brings together musicians from different generations, backgrounds, and musical traditions. Through performances, rehearsals, jam sessions, and mentorship, musicians continue passing knowledge and experiences from one generation to the next. My name is AJ, and I'm a jazz bassist and student at St. Mary's College. Growing up in the Bay Area, I've had the opportunity to learn from musicians whose knowledge stretches across generations. In jazz, music is never passed down through books alone. It survives through rehearsal, live performances, conversations, and the relationships built on and off the bandstand. This film explores the question, how have mentorship, collaboration, and storytelling allowed Bay Area jazz traditions to survive and evolve across multiple generations of musicians? To better understand that question, I spoke with musicians and educators who continue to shape the Bay Area jazz community today. Through their experiences, a larger picture begins to emerge. Jazz is more than a style of music. It is a living tradition built on shared knowledge, human connection, and community. To begin, I wanted to understand the role collaboration plays in jazz. I spoke with drummer, composer, and educator Malachi Whitson before a performance with Project 8 at 5 Points about why collaboration sits at the center of the music.
My name is Malachi Whitson. I'm a performing artist, composer, and educator. My main principle is drums, but I like to write music and have a good time. I started playing music when I was about 4 years old. By the time I was like 6, I started taking lessons. By the time I was 7, I started performing. We had a family band, and I don't know, man, I got to middle school and people were like, you sound good. And then I started touring in middle school and got to high school, started touring around the world. Had the privilege of being in a bunch of cool programs and, just hanging out in the community. So I guess, I just started with friends and family and just kept going from there. Collaboration is extremely important. I mean, our whole entire way of life as jazz musicians is based on sharing things with other people, learning information, sharing it with each other, sharing it with the world. It's probably the cornerstone of what we do, both in education and in performance. As an educator, the whole entire experience is a collaboration. I feel like a lot of educators feel like, hey, I'm here to teach, and show you guys something. But I really find we're actually here to just share information with each other. So, collaboration is everything in this art form, for sure. It's important to have a strong understanding of your fundamentals, your scales, arpeggios, knowing the form, knowing what scales to use, where you can use them, how to use them. Also knowing how to phrase melodies and leave space. All that stuff is important, but that's not the meat of it. I think the true core of it is having a conversation on the bandstand. And because of that, that requires collaboration. And the way I teach it is conversational. Like for me, when musicians are improvising in jazz, we're talking to each other. We're talking to each other, And so that's what we're doing. And if you're not doing that, you're not really playing jazz, I feel like. So for me, 90% of my hierarchy of importance when it comes to teaching this music and playing it is to establish a strong conversation with the people around me. And that's a collaborative effort, You can't have a conversation by yourself,
Jazz is not only passed down through performance, but through stories. The history behind the music gives meaning to the sounds musicians create today. I caught up with a former teacher of mine, Jamal Ramirez, before a performance honoring Charles Mingus. I asked him about the importance of storytelling and preserving jazz traditions.
Well, it's culture, right? I mean, it's hard to really teach anything related to art unless you put it in the context of what helped develop that thing that you're studying. Unless you kind of study like anything and everything that had to do with shaping how it was received, how it was presented, how it was maintained. I mean, it's all relevant to me. So, if anything, they're just good stories. Like a lot of times when I've gone to jazz camps as a student, and somebody legendary was teaching, half of the lessons were, them talking about what it was like when they were teenagers learning the music, or when they first landed their first big gig, or what it was like to work with this legendary person or that legendary person. And so yeah, I think for sure to read about and study the history is definitely relevant. It's not going to necessarily always help you play the music better, but it gives you definitely an understanding of where the music's coming from, why it's important to some people, maybe more than others, possibly. Why it should be important to people who are playing it. In terms of telling stories, it just brings the music to life, because the music was created in the 1920s, 1930s. I wasn't around back then. And the people who like Greg Gosby, who were 15, 20 years older than me, even they have a different perspective on the music than I do, because, they were graduating high school 1960. Let me think about what was happening in 1960, totally different time frame. So, yeah, just stories. Love stories.
Stories and collaboration often lead directly into mentorship. Many jazz musicians can trace their growth back to teachers, band leaders, or older musicians who helped guide them early on. Pianist and composer Sam Ryder spoke about the mentors who shaped his musical path and the ongoing mentorship he still experiences through collaboration.
Hi, my name's Sam Ryder. I'm a pianist, an accordionist, and a composer, and a teacher, and I live in San Francisco, California. So I got started when I was really young playing piano. My dad was a pianist and a composer, and my uncles and grandfathers played as well. And when I first started, I was playing classical piano like a lot of kids do. And about the time that I was 10, I really started to hate it. And so my dad, instead of letting me quit altogether, suggested, why don't we try jazz lessons? And he had played some jazz as well when he was younger. And he found this teacher in San Francisco, this guy named Lee Bloom, who ended up being just the perfect teacher for me at that moment in my life. He was a really nice person, and that's an important thing in a teacher. He really listened to me, and he taught me how to listen. So all of a sudden I had jazz, and I really fell in love with it. And after a few years, by the time I was in high school, it really became my own thing, and I became really self-motivated and practiced a lot and auditioned and ended up going to New York City and played jazz there. And maybe one of my first real mentorship experiences was in working with a person that I actually still perform with quite a bit, whose name is Jorge Glem. He's the Venezuelan musician that I play with. Jorge, first of all, he plays the cuatro. It's the guitar of Venezuela, and he is a genius of rhythm. And he's not that much older than me. He's maybe 7 years older than me, but his life experience is vast and very different than my own. And I look up to him kind of like a big musical brother. And I feel very safe whenever I'm on stage with him, because I feel like he's got it all under control, and I can just learn. I've learned so much about rhythm and music and Latin music and just everything from him. We don't even speak the same language, but I really feel like I come home from my tours with him, and I've just grown a lot as a human being and as a musician as well.
Hearing Sam describe mentorship reminded me of my own experiences as a student. Sam previously worked with our masterclass cohort at St. Mary's. His mentorship pushed us to listen more deeply, communicate more clearly, and approach jazz as a shared conversation rather than an individual performance. What came clear throughout these interviews is that jazz traditions survive because musicians continue investing in one another. Knowledge is shared from teacher to student, from bandmate to bandmate, and from one generation to the next. Every rehearsal, performance, and conversation becomes part of that process. The Bay Area jazz community continues to evolve because of the relationships that sustain it. Mentorship creates opportunities for younger musicians to grow. collaboration allows musicians to communicate across backgrounds and generations. Storytelling preserves the experiences, struggles, and history connected to the music. Each musician in this film described jazz not simply as a genre, but as a living community built through shared experience. Whether through teaching, performing, or passing along stories from older generations, these artists continue a tradition that depends on human connection. As a student and musician, these experiences have shown me that learning jazz is about more than developing technical skill. It is about listening, participating, and contributing to something larger than yourself. The tradition survives because people continue to share.